Nearshore Americas, as Kirk mentioned, launched an active research arm a year ago with the goal of delivering data-driven insights to Nearshore stakeholders. Our research is driven by primary sources, and Nearshore is our exclusive focus. We cover all markets from Brazil to small Caribbean islands. We start by orienting investors around key metrics such as business infrastructure, and we undertake quantitative analysis and conduct surveys in both English and Spanish. Cuba as compared to 14 other Caribbean countries as well as some smaller Latin American countries. Obviously, Cuba has a problem with fixed line broadband access. The surprising finding that I am always happy to talk about, Cuba has the largest surplus of IT talent in the Americas. This is a paradox because the Cuban government has a very, very good process for training STEM graduates, and unfortunately not such a good program for directing them into STEM jobs where they're fully utilized. We also offer the overall size as well as the allocation of talent throughout the island. So outside of Havana, there's quite a few places that are legitimate hubs for IT programming talent. Again, there's a slight paradox here because the government actually enacted some internal travel restrictions. And so what you see is not just in places like Santa Clara, but also in places like Holguin, there is formidable IT talent. This looks at front-end and back-end wages for programmers in Guatemala. This was part of our IT wage study. So what you're going to see on the left is, in dollar terms, junior, mid, and senior level developers. And what you're going to see on the right is the quote-unquote, what economists are going to call the loaded wage, which is, in addition to the wage, you have mandatory severance, the equivalent of Social Security. In Latin America, I'm sure many people are familiar with aguinaldo. And this adds 30.55% to the dollar wage. In Guatemala, we've done this for over a dozen markets in Latin America so far. The State of the Nearshore 2016. In March and April, we conducted a survey of 144 Nearshore professionals in order to get a detailed sense of the state of the Nearshore. Their responses are the basis of the data presented today. The goal of this survey was to break down Nearshore as a value proposition by identifying how the key components of Nearshore delivery, arbitrage, time zone alignment, proximity, business culture affinity, position markets differently. This helps us better understand the relative strengths of each market and diagnose where opportunities lie for expansion. Also, we were interested in looking at the impact of technological change on business, how the region is positioned to cope with rising automation, and what opportunities this may open up for those entrepreneurs, and firms willing to take the initiative. Although the Nearshore tends to define its value based on savings and suitability for delivery to the U.S. market, the reality is the offshore directly competes with the Nearshore across many niches. 60% of survey respondents said they consider the offshore the most direct competitor to. So what are the key characteristics of Nearshore? Generally, the defining features of Nearshore are lumped together as a value proposition. However, when we asked buyers and vendors about the most appealing features of Nearshore as a BPO market, their responses indicate that while cost is the most important factor, proximity and time zone alignment are also important. Cost is an even more dominant feature when it comes to nearshore software development. Unsurprisingly, proximity advantages those delivery markets nearest to the main destination, the United States. This puts Mexico at a relative advantage to the South American nearshore. And proximity as an advantage drops off significantly south of Central America. Beyond the direct reason for this, that buyers and programmers are within an easy day's plane ride, there are other advantages to nearshore proximity as well. Proximity positions Mexico, and to a lesser degree Costa Rica, to absorb U.S. technology more rapidly and fully. Nearshore has negotiated its share of challenges lately. For instance, Latin American currencies have experienced historic depreciation since 2014, with both the Brazilian real and the Mexican and Colombian pesos suffering deep declines in their value. Yet, the survey results suggest that nearshore operators have found currency weakness to be a minor challenge to business operations and growth plans. And even if this volatility continues through 2016, it is unlikely to pose a tall hurdle to firms conditioned to operating in the region. In the short term, this even provided a competitive advantage for many vendors. Digital disruption has become an off-bandied term in the industry, but despite ruminations of the robots taking all the jobs and a withering of the industry due to automation, Latin America appears well positioned for the transition. Well over half of the survey respondents noted that digital disruptions will not affect their willingness to invest in nearshore delivery, or else the technological shift will make them more likely to invest in nearshore. In recent years, one trend that's gained steam in global outsourcing is the reshoring of services back to the destination market, especially the United States. In part, this has been a reflection of rising offshore costs and greater wariness that offshore markets are saturated. However, nearshore service providers, who by and large have not relied on lowest global cost as the sole value proposition, remain cautiously optimistic that reshoring will not hurt nearshore as an industry. 51% of respondents acknowledge that the full effects of reshoring remain to be seen. And in general, there's not the sense of full excitement about the industry going forward as there was. This sentiment of cautious optimism spreads into perceptions of once hot markets like Costa Rica. The country offers an impressive array of BPO opportunities, and this, combined with a skilled workforce and strong government support, have allowed it to emerge as a major delivery destination. However, in the last 1 to 2 years, wage increases have pushed up the cost of operations. While the baseline forecast for Costa Rica is moderate growth through 2019, twice as many nearshore survey respondents said the BPO-ITO industry was likely to contract as those who said it was poised for rapid growth in the years ahead. There have been some notable moves by governments in the region to ease the burden of regulatory compliance, including measures by Enrique Peña Nieto in Mexico and more recently Mauricio Macri in Argentina. These reforms don't look to be a major variable in the calculus of BPO IT investment, at least not yet. While call centers or CRM is by far the most reliable way to do this for either small or large Caribbean islands, critical distinction should be made when it comes to advanced BPO, including KPO, as well as ITO. Large Caribbean nations like Jamaica are at a relative advantage when it comes to the provision of ITO and KPO. And Latin America still isn't a place that global servicers look to principally for innovation. However, large world-class vendors serve as an important channel for the delivery of leading business technology into the region. In time, implementation of leading technology may spark greater degrees of innovation, fueling entrepreneurs to build on their exposure to push the bounds of existing technology. Perhaps the biggest source of concern over the welfare of the nearshore is the perception of violent crime across Latin America. Scaring away investment is only one of the sad effects of the human tragedy of drug-related violent crime in the region. Honduras and El Salvador, among other countries, continue to suffer from violent crime. And unfortunately for the Mexican BPO-ITO industry, the country suffers from similarly negative perceptions, despite the fact that violent crime has decreased significantly in Mexico since 2013, and currently Brazil's murder rate is higher than Mexico's. But in terms of bottlenecks, checks on the development of software development firms, a shortage of talent in the home market is clearly the most prominent challenge to firms with global ambitions. 45% of respondents identified talent shortage as the top issue preventing software development firms from growing into major global firms. Also, the fact that firms can't expand across the region is a prominent factor in limiting growth. Without the ability to develop a regional footprint, software firms have trouble mastering that phase of advanced, but not fully grown up, that can make teenagers so awkward.
Thanks.
In one of your slides, you mentioned something about obstacles to become global or something like that, and there was an issue there that said that companies could not grow through the region or something
Right.
around that. What did you mean about that?
Yes,
Meaning the region, the whole Latin.
Yeah, they can't effectively grow into a global player by filling out from their home market into surrounding markets. What you tend to see is they'll be in their home market and they may establish a second office, and then they look to establish an office either in the United States or simply they stay in those two markets. So they don't develop throughout the region.
The region, you mean the whole Latin America or only a country?
Yeah, even establishing more than one leg. So two different markets is how we defined it when we asked the question in the survey.
So in terms of your research in Cuba, considering that there's not a lot of private employment, what do you guys find out in terms of actual experience? So you mentioned some of the technologies that people use, but how many years of experience, and is that experience in the private sector or public sector?
Yeah, so we looked into this. We broke it down in the report by years of experience, so that certainly is there. One of the things we found out is that basically these people are extremely adept at writing mobile code, for instance, because they have really patchy access to the internet, so it's very lean. And so it has tremendous, the opportunities are there. Increasingly, there seems to be a sense that it's not clear how quickly Cuba will open, but what has opened is not going to go back. And so more firms are serving as brokers to use this talent.